Yeah, you get the dog sis, the younger one, because both parents work. But Danielle is mostly home.
Yeah.
They have two little chihuahuas.
Clients? Well, I have a big dog.
What do you have?
A lab.
Oh.
Well, we got my daughter.
Of course, if you do
So I'm making doing all the walking.
Yeah, just the one dog.
Yes.
Yeah, that's.
Welcome and thank you for participating in today's meeting for the South Coast Air Quality Management District. If attending in person, please do not connect to Zoom or teleconference while in the room. To prevent disruptions, please silence all devices. All participants on Zoom, except for board members and South Coast AQMD staff, will be placed on mute. Do not be able to mute or unmute your line manually.
In the county, we have
For
to.
each item, public comment will be taken.
State.
If you are participating in person and wish to comment, please use the iPad which is located in the lobby if the meeting is in the auditorium. For meetings in other locations, please complete a blue speaker card and provide the card to a South Coast AQMD employee. Information on how to participate in the meeting in Spanish using a telephone will be provided at the end of these housekeeping remarks. Speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes or less for all items on the agenda. The amount of time to comment may be shortened to ensure all speakers can be heard. A countdown timer will be displayed on the screen for each public comment. If interpretation is needed, more time will be allotted. For questions or issues related to making public comment, please call the public advisor at 909-396-3247. That's 909-396-3247. In terms of decorum, if this meeting is taking place in the auditorium, no food or beverages are allowed in the auditorium. In accordance with state and local public health department guidelines, people may choose to wear a mask based on personal preference while in South Coast AQMD facility. Please adhere to the speaker time limit and treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect. Failure to do so can result in your mic being muted or you being removed from the meeting. Lastly, be aware that this meeting is being recorded. By participating, you agree to authorize recording of audio and visual content presented during the live event and consent to subsequent use of the recording in the public domain by South Coast AQMD.
Is that the conclusion? Great. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Welcome again to your board assistance briefing. As you can tell, I'm not Sarah. She's in Europe, nor am I going to try to imitate her British accent. So moving on. Okay. First, I just want to highlight to you guys. So I know we had the admin meeting, and if you were following that, there were certain items that you see are probably different than the agenda items that you received today. I'm just going to briefly highlight those in case any of you guys happen to have printed out the one from the admin committee. First off, under the set hearing packages, you'll see that we have removed 1180 and 1180.1. I can highlight anything if you have any questions in regards to that. But we've also added rules 1110.2 and 1110.3, and we'll touch on those briefly in a moment. We removed an RFP we're still working on for Southeast LA. This is for the SERP there. We just need some more time to work with CARB. We've also added some updates because we've recently moved, the board decided to move our rule 5, the ETO rule, to December, kind of opened up then our sort of public hearing slots. So we thought this is a great opportunity to present to the board updates on our MATES 6 program, as well as the railroad MOU. And again, we'll touch base on both of those items momentarily, but I just wanted to kind of highlight those differences from the admin committee. I believe Wayne did talk to the chair, and so to get the, got a nod from our CO. Okay, we're good. And to move forward with the agenda as is today for the October. Any questions? Great. By the way, in case you don't know, I'm Mike Krause. Not that you care, okay, but just so you know.
We care.
We all know.
That's
you're
okay.
Mike
Well,
Krause.
in case someone calls me Mark and then, but I'll just respond to anyway, because I'll take any. Okay. We're going to kind of go out a little bit of order here because Sujata has to leave us early. So we're going to start actually on page 6. This is agenda item 12127. Adopting a resolution, recognizing the revenue, appropriate funds, execute and amend contracts, and issue solicitations, purchase orders for the continuation of our important AB 617 implementation program. Sujata, why don't you lead us, please?
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, everyone. Financial Officer. This item is to adopt a resolution to accept the terms and conditions of the sunset implementation plan. It's also to recognize revenue from CARB into the general fund in the amount of $3,326,667, and then to appropriate $3,400,000 into fiscal year 23-24 or 24-25 budget for the 8617 expenditures. And then lastly, to authorize the executive officer to execute contracts for 8617 implementation grant activities in accordance with our procurement policy and procedures as listed in tables 1 through 3. And I have questions.
Great. Thank you, Sujata. Any questions for Sujata?
I remember back in the day when 617 was first started, they were concerned about ongoing funding. Sounds like Sacramento is being good about that.
So far, but it is still a serious concern for us because we don't have a commitment for, each year, that ongoing funding. So we get 21.8 million and it's about 90 positions in the agency. So we really have to think about, it's like, what happens if we don't get that ongoing funding or it starts to taper off.
And we're still working, right, on doing the implementation. So it's important. While we still have Sujata, any more questions? I'm sorry. Any more questions? We're good. While we still have Sujata, there is one other just received and file item on the next page, on page 7, 12153. This is a standard report that Sujata submits. Does anyone have any questions for her on that? Otherwise, we can let her go. Okay. All right, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sujata. Really appreciate it. Okay. All right. Now back to the standard procedure. I wouldn't want Sarah to get back word that I messed up for meeting. Okay, we're going to jump to page 9. Again, these are the presentations that we're going to be providing the board. I think these are going to be really great. They're going to be really informative. And well, we're not kind of looking to get into the weeds on this today on these. I think it's important to kind of give you a sense of what we're looking at and presenting. So first up, Dr. Scott Epstein will tell you quick what we're going to be looking at for the mates.
All right. So while everybody probably knows Mike, you may not know me. So I'm Scott Epstein. I supervise the air quality assessment group in planning. So we're really excited. We started planning for a MATE 6 study. So MATES is this really comprehensive study that has a big monitoring component and a modeling component to try and quantify the risk due to air toxics in our region. So we're kicking off the 6th version of the study. So far, we've convened a 21-member technical advisory group of mostly academics and people from other government agencies. As part of MATE 6, we're planning on doing some new innovative things, expanding our MATES measurements to near road locations to focus on the near road impacts. We're going to do measurements in the Coachella Valley, in eastern Coachella Valley. We're going to collect data for a source apportionment study to better kind of examine the exact sources of different pollutants in the region. And then we're going to do a risk analysis and conduct ethylene oxide measurements. And the last thing that will be new is we're going to evaluate impacts of brake and tire wear emissions, kind of looking how that contributes to toxic risk if we can, but at least how it contributes to the total PM 2.5 burden in the basin. So the plan is to have an informational presentation at the board meeting, and then our monitoring and analysis division is going to go to admin committee in November to kind of propose the resources that we need, what we need to buy to make MATE 6 a reality. And then hopefully if that's successful, go to the board in December. And then assuming we don't have any unforeseen delays in acquiring instrumentation, the plan is to start measurements in 2025.
Good question. How many sites do you envision?
So the plan is to do 10 sites.
10 sites.
So we've always done 10 sites, but we're going to move things around a little bit this year in terms of adding a site in the Coachella Valley and then moving some sites around to get those 2 near roads.
You mentioned you're going to be looking at ETO also,
Yeah,
but in all 10 sites?
right, exactly.
Thank you, Ron.
Given the previous timeframe of data collection and then final report, do we have an anticipation of final report date?
Yeah, so
I know that's years off.
it's a little bit hard to project,
Okay.
but it takes, we estimate a year of measurements, right? And then, to do the analysis is maybe another year, and then kind of report writing and dissemination is maybe 9 months, on the bright line, but
Yeah.
27.
I might be dead by then.
Later.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep, just like an AQMD, right? So you never stop. Yes, Tom.
Well, I live out in Ukaipa, and I get
You had
the
to ride a buggy in.
well, horse.
I was gonna say, we're not judging, Tom. Okay,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. But if you look at the daily reports that I guess they come from Wayne's office, but it shows the map, and then it says for all these different parts of the different counties, what the air quality is for that. And we're always like nice and high. And I can tell you health wise, it does have an impact. And on the coast, they're much lower than what we are. They're a third sometimes what we are. And so it just seems like there's always a focus in LA County and maybe a little bit in Orange County. And you guys kind of forget that there are these other 2 counties out there. I mean, I know you're going to go to Coachella, but we got our own problems out there. And if you look at the maps, you'll see it. I mean, it's,
Yeah, so my group actually issues those air quality goals.
So perfect person to ask.
Yeah, so the two things that kind of drive the high criteria for which the forecast is based upon is ozone levels and PM 2.5, right? And ozone levels are the highest, out in your area, right? San Bernardino County area. And that's what drives the high daily forecasts each day. MATES is more focused on air toxics, which is more biased, like the ports have the highest air toxics levels, highest air toxics risk. Kind of metropolitan LA has most of the risk. However, we do have a MATES station out in San Bernardino, I believe. It may be Fontana, but there is a MATES station out in your area. And we also do the modeling analysis, which looks at the entire basin. So we haven't forgotten about your area when it comes to air toxics. But it's just that most of you're in pretty good shape in terms of air toxics.
air toxins. It's the other stuff that's killing us.
Sites,
Yeah. So ozone is the highest.
A question
Yes, Bill.
down here. Thank you. I read recently that due to the weight of electric cars, the tires wear out in about a third of the time that they do on a comparable gas-powered car. Teslas in particular were mentioned. Is there any plan to look at the difference between the tire wear as part of this study or any study? And are there any efforts to develop more durable tires for electric cars that you know of that are underway?
Yeah, those are great questions. So we've been looking a lot into this. So recently, kind of the academic community realized that tire wear is actually a pretty big source of PM 2.5.
Water pollution too.
Yeah,
Plastic.
water pollution, right. So there's a lot of interest, but it's a relatively immature field, surprisingly, even though tires have been around a while. But yeah, in terms of tire and brake wear, our anticipation is that brake wear may be less and less of a problem as you have more EVs and there's more regenerative braking. But as you have heavier vehicle weights and more torque, right, you're going to have more tire wear. So we are going to look at kind of the emissions in general and the air toxics that come from that. It's a little hard to say like how we'll be able to project that into the future, right? Maybe that's more of like an AQMD type analysis.
Okay.
But yeah, we're gonna try and do the best we can to sort of quantify the current state of what's out there.
Which could then inform future policy,
Exactly.
right? So,
Right. Sure. Okay, thank you.
great, thank you,
I have
Bill.
a question.
Yes, Mark.
I'll turn, look, thank you. It says you're doing some new near road sites. I know right now we have two, right? One in Ontario off of the 60 and I think one on the 710. Is that correct?
There's actually 4 near road sites. So there's 60 in Ontario. There's the 10 in Ontario, the 5 in Anaheim, and then the 710. Although we only conduct PM2, they measure different pollutants, right? So PM 2.5 is only at 2 of the stations.
And how many additional on-road are you looking at doing?
So what we're going to do, we're not going to add any more beyond that 4. It's just that we're going to do speciation and air toxics measurements at 2 of them. So the measurements at the near road sites are relatively limited. They're just focusing on the criteria pollutants. But we're going to expand 2 of those to do speciation and air toxics.
Okay. And beyond ETO, are there other, it says that you're adding new toxics. What other new toxics are you adding to this study?
So mainly looking at some of these brake and tire wear markers. And that's kind of it. I mean, we may, I shouldn't say that, it's it. We're trying to identify some other markers that can help with source apportionment. So for example, meat cooking emissions, right, are a fairly large source of PM 2.5. It's sometimes hard to separate that unless you have specific markers. So like cholesterol, we're still in the very early planning stages of which markers we're going to look for. But, adding measurements of cholesterol can help inform source apportionment because, we'll be able to assign, a fraction of the mass to meat cooking. So there's some of these kind of one-off species that we may add to help with it.
So with the brakes, you're not, I assume, are they still made of asbestos? You're looking at like a increased amount of asbestos, or is that no longer the primary element for brake pads?
Yeah, I don't think they're made of
Ceramic.
anymore.
Ceramic and copper.
Okay.
So the hard thing with brake and tire wear is we need to find kind of unique markers. So we had some conversations with UCI, and there's a consultant firm out in the UK that we're starting these conversations to identify unique markers and then do those measurements. But it's a pretty immature area in the academic research community, surprisingly.
And you said that the modeling you're changing, I know it's been a while, or not long ago, that I know industry was coming forward and kind of pushing and wanting to see the new MATE study. And part of that was related to the methodology and the modeling. Have you had discussions with, or is there a clear understanding of what they're asking and how they're trying to help the district with their future MATE 6 study and with the modeling that they're doing?
Yeah, I think some of those comments were related to just using more updated data. So we do have an updated inventory from the 2022 AQMD. So the inventory that we use for the model will kind of be the freshest available, and data also that brings in data from SCAG on like vehicle activity data, things like that.
Okay,
So,
yeah, I remember the discussion, but I seem to recall that they also, beyond the fact that they wanted fresher data, that there might have been at least some, I don't know, concern or issues related to the actual methodology in the modeling, or some of the formulas or the way that they were being applied. So I didn't know if that was also part of does that sound familiar? I just remember a comment and that.
I just recently went back and watched those meetings.
Yeah, I don't recall that, but as we move through the MATES process, there'll be a working group and we'll discuss, all aspects and the details and the technical information and, the approach that we're taking. So there is a inventory aspect to it where we're quantifying and, how that information goes into the model. So if there's questions about that, then we'll be able to get input from all the stakeholders.
Okay. And based on what I heard, we're looking at about 2.5, 3 years where this actually is in place, a year worth of gathering, year worth of analysis, 9-month-ish worth of report writing.
Right, and that's from the time that we get the instrumentation, which takes a while to get ordered.
All right, thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Mark. Ben?
Yeah, so the issue of unique markers, is there a possibility that there could be unique marker differences between big rig tires, passenger cars, and likewise with the brake pads for different types of commercial versus passenger vehicles?
It's definitely possible. So we saw a presentation from Nick Molden at Emission Analytics. He actually presented at the Clean Fuels Advisory Committee, the last meeting. So it was really interesting conversation about tire wear and the different compositions of tire wear, how that contributes to cost. But tires are remarkably complex, the amount of compounds that they add, trying to optimize for different things. So it is possible. I don't know yet. He would know, but it is possible that there'll be some differences in composition. I mean, we know there are different compositions, but that there'll be unique enough markers that we can distinguish. But I can't promise anything, but it's definitely possible.
It'd be great if they could.
Yeah.
Give us a handle on the freight impact, right?
Good point.
Anyone else?
One final question, being that you're in the hot seat. I think since last year, we've had 6 stations taken offline. Is that correct?
I don't know. There have been several. I don't know if it's
It's
exactly
6.
Okay.
But there's a new one going in to Montana, you mentioned? Is that what you told us?
I think Jason, I think this is the NACS and the for NACS and the other monitors. This is separate from the MATES
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Jason Lowe, Deputy Executive Officer, Monitoring Analysis. So the air monitoring network has been shifting a little bit just because we've been optimizing the network, working with Scott's group and trying to optimize like where the best locations are, but also due to just logistical considerations where sometimes we've lost our lease because the landowner needs to repurpose the land we're on. So the network is in a little bit more of a shift than normal. So we have our air monitoring station in Fontana, which is supporting the MATES study. And we have all the other locations as well that are being selected to do the fixed monitoring portion of MATE 6.
Well, my concern is that some of these are trend stations, and if you take the trend station off, you're not gonna have that data to look at some trends. And one of the most interesting ones, in my opinion, is the Azusa Glendora station. The Azusa is fairly close to the 210, and you will see that their ozone levels are significantly lower than Glendora, which is about 4 or 5 miles away. And probably that's due to the more NOx actually reducing the ozone, which I find quite interesting. So, and the other thing that I found surprising is that our two model stations don't look at NOx. They don't have NOx monitoring.
What
Well, that would be Redlands and Crestline.
Yeah.
I find that interesting because it's,
I told you, they don't care about them.
but that might be one reason because they have very low, I know they have very low NOx, maybe the major reason why they have such high ozone. Just throw it out there.
Yeah, so I'll just comment on the monitoring portion. So we do the evaluation of where the expected highest levels of those pollutants are. And usually when ozones form, NOx has already been titrated out for parts of that to react with the VOCs. So, you know, we work with Scott's group closely to kind of see where predicted areas of elevated concentrations or areas that we want to investigate further from a regional perspective to look at the criteria pollutants. That goes without saying that our environmental justice monitoring initiatives under AB 617, we do look at the more localized distribution of pollutants, and that does include NO2, does include looking at specific roads and freeways that are of interest of the communities to look at from a monitoring perspective. So we are looking at from both the regional as well as the local perspective in some of those areas.
Great. Thank you, Jason. Really appreciate it. Any more questions for Scott before he leaves the hot seat? Okay. No, this has been really robust. I mean, to imagine all the great questions the inquiries you guys are making right now, what it's going to be like, with your representative. So super excited. And I'm glad you guys are having a high interest in it because we are as well.
Just one quick question, between maybe Jason, is the Fontana monitoring where they're also doing the toxics, is that the one still on Arrow by the fire station? Is that still the location or has that changed?
It would still be at Arrow.
It's still, okay, thank you.
All right.
What does the study cost? Just out of curiosity.
So Jason's group spends most of the money, so I'll let him handle that.
We're doing the full evaluation, and that's why a partial reason why we're going to the November admin committee, because we are finalizing the strategy, and also we want to incorporate some of the thoughts from the technical advisory group to kind of fine tune our estimates for what would be needed for MATES 5. But we are looking at additional equipment near road. We're also looking at some data platforms and maybe some contracts to fill in some of the gaps that maybe our laboratory would not be able to do, such as the tire and brakes studies. So we have to kind of evaluate all of that to deliver a good package for admin committee in November.
Great. Thank you very much, Jason. Really appreciate it. Okay, are we good then with that agenda item? Alrighty, stay on the same page, on page 9. We're going to move on to our agenda item 12172, update on the rail yard facility-based mobile source measures. We have Dr. Elaine Shen, who will go ahead and give us an update on that. Elaine.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. I'm glad that I don't have to sit in the hot seat where Scott. Okay. And so to start with, like Mike said, he is not Sarah. I am also not Ian. So Ian will be presenting on this item, but he's also in Europe right now. So just an overall introduction for myself. I am Elaine Shen, and I'm planning and rules manager working on both the ports and also rail mobile source measures. And so this item to provide an update on Rail ER mobile source measure was going to be an item for our September mobile source committee, but because we ran out of time, so we would like to bring this item to the full board for our October board meeting. And so in this meeting, there are a few updates we would like to provide. So first of all, some updates on the new intermodal rail yard, SCIG, Southern California Intermodal Gateway. And so we did hear at the recent EPA meeting that that new rail yard is still under consideration. But even with the information, we just wanted to assure everybody that the potential MOU that we're discussing right now will cover both new and existing rail yards for all the rail related air emissions, and they will be included in the MOU, scope of the MOU. And on the other hand, we also wanted to provide some updates about like our discussion with the railroads. So we are still working through a lot of details, but we do have some preliminary concept about how the MOU timeline, the term will look like. And we're also discussing that in addition to that end day milestone by 2033 that we provided an update to the board last time, we are also talking through what the interim milestones will look like to make sure that we will have the progress in the interim, not just waiting until the end of the MOU. And so we're working through the details, but then we just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that we do have consensus that those interim milestones are needed. And perhaps the most important updates will be that, so we do receive some like detailed information from the railroads and looking at the number of the applicable locomotives and also the cargo handling equipment that will be committed like to become cleaner. And so we did have some preliminary estimates about how much emission reductions we will be looking at. So we believe that for the cargo handling equipment, we will be going above and beyond the existing regulatory requirements. So there will be additional benefits there. And for the locomotive emissions, it's also a significant number, right? And we will be discussing that. We're still working through vetting all the calculations. So we'll be providing more detailed numbers at the board meeting. So we believe that those numbers will be substantial and they are also consistent and with no conflicts with CARB's in-use locomotive regulation. And so we'll walk through that as well. In the meantime, we would like to also provide an overview about the preliminary concepts that we have for our ISR indirect source rule making and do a comparison there as well. And yep. And
all right. Thank you, Elaine. Really appreciate that update. Does anybody have any questions for Elaine at this point? Okay,
Well,
you're off
Elaine
your
or
hot seat
Michael,
now. No, you
Elaine
go,
and
Mark.
Michael, if there's no, is, so
Sure.
the hope is to have it before the board in December?
For this particular one,
Yeah, so that has been the goal for December, but we're probably looking, I think Wayne had kind of hedged at the last governing board meeting that it's like December, like, you know, early 2024. So we're looking probably sliding to the January timeframe right now.
depends on the feedback.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Are there a number of issues that you have to deal with in regard to rail yard?
I think things are going, you know, pretty good right now. And it's like we had that bit of a delay where we had to cancel the community meetings, is that we received some information from them and we had to go back and forth. It was the emission reductions part of that. And we knew that was a very important piece to the board members. So we wanted to make sure that we could get that piece before we communicated with the community and then also bring that forward. So Elaine, that will be part of the presentation, talking about the estimated reductions.
Great. Bill?
Yeah, I had a question about the funding, particularly for zero emissions equipment. Is it anticipated that the railroads largely would look to the IRA funding that's available federally? Or would they be doing any self-funding to the extent they're going to use, zero emissions trucks and that sort of thing for the incremental cost?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. I think everyone's, looking, to the extent, trying to maximize all of the federal funding and any, type of funding that is available to push the envelope on zero emissions. There, is so much work that needs to be done on that front.
Right.
In the demonstration projects that are occurring, just deploying and infrastructure. And so everyone will be looking at all of those federal grants.
Okay. Thanks.
To the extent the community meetings were postponed, do we have an anticipated date as yet for reschedule?
Yeah, it'll be, so it's almost locked down, so I'm not gonna say,
Yeah.
but hopefully we'll have that in the presentation.
Okay.
Yeah,
So is there a meeting scheduled this week for Copeland or last week?
it was scheduled for last week. There were 3 community meetings and we had to postpone those. So, yeah,
I didn't miss anything.
you didn't miss anything.
How many yards are we looking at now? Is it around 10?
Yeah, I want to say like 9 or 10. Elaine, do you have that number?
Sorry, I think.
How many rail yards are
The existing.
Yeah, so we're looking at all the applicable rail yards within the air basin, and we still need to confirm that list with the railroads. But then I think we have pretty good mutual understanding right now. We just need to put that down in a piece of paper.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you, Elaine, once again. Okay, so for the agenda, we're back to the October agenda. Let's go ahead and move back up front to page 3. We're going to be setting some hearings. The first one is going to be setting hearings for our new rule, proposed rule 1110.3, as well as amending our 1110.2. Mike Morris, our planning rules manager here, you want to give us a quick update on those?
Thank you, Mike. Linear generators are a rather new technology. Just to give you a brief explanation of the technology. A reaction occurs with a mix of fuel and air, similar to what an engine would do, but it's at a low temperature. And because of that reaction, it moves a piston or an oscillator, and that movement eventually will generate electricity. Don't want to go too much into the details, but low temperature means that they have very low emissions. And we're looking at near zero emissions per NOx without any type of control, which is a very intriguing technology for us. And we see some interesting applications that might have in the future. So we developed this new rule for this technology, and the new rule will include emission limits and source testing requirements and monitoring procedures to make sure that they're meeting the requirements of the rule. There was some discussion earlier in the year about this technology and the source testing requirements for it. The manufacturers asked us to pursue certification possibilities, and we checked with the US EPA on several different ways that we might be able to do it. US EPA came back to us and said, no, we need to actually see the certification before we'd be willing to approve it. So what we're going to do is, as part of this rule, include resolution language that says that we're going to start the certification process and report back on how we're doing on that. In the interim, there'll be source testing every 5 years for this equipment. And if they have identical units, many identical units at a facility, they're eligible for pool testing, which would mean they would test a third of the units every 3 years. Yes.
EPA, this rule was not in the SIP, right?
So rule 1110.2, where linear generators are currently included, yes, it is part of the SIP.
My question is, if they didn't know about this, we wanted to do a separate rule altogether, would we still have to go through the AQMD approval?
Yeah, when it involves emissions and limits and any of those have to go into the SIP. Yeah,
We would want to.
yeah. Yeah, and the limits are ratcheting down a little bit further actually into this as well. Yes, Bill.
I had a question on the other constituents and any emissions from these. Clearly nitrogen oxides would be low, but what about hydrocarbons? Products of incomplete combustion, in other words, what comes out of it?
So thank you for that question. So on both the hydrocarbons and the CO, this technology does meet the California distributed generator standard. So they're very low across the board for natural gas. And one of the things that we'd like to explore in the future with this rule are other fuels. And we haven't had any data yet on those types of fuels. So that may be something in the future where we bring back propane or hydrogen or something else where they might have that interest in operating that fuel.
Okay, thanks.
Great. All right, any other questions?
One other quick question
Yes,
about I know that at least as of right now, I think there's only one company that's actually in that business. And I know there's been some discussion back and forth. So would you characterize you're at agreement, or as far as the source testing time, how long or how often you do it and that sort of things? I know there was some back and forth saying that the emissions are going to be, near zero. So I know that there's been discussions about that. Have you come to conclusion or agreement with them?
So there actually are two companies, and but yes, we have talked with both of them, and they're both in agreement at this time.
Okay. That short of getting the EPA certification, which I know that they were anxious to get.
Yeah, so they plan on working with us on that process.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Mike. Okay, moving on to the next item on page 4, we're going to be setting 2011, 2012. You want me to go ahead and cover it? Okay, I'll go ahead and cover it. Like a break. Okay, so we're looking to do kind of a surgical amendment, both of these rules. These are the reclaim rules, regulating procedures and methodologies, blah, 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 for continuous emissions monitoring and reclaim facilities. Now, non-reclaim facilities are already being regulated, or SEMs are already being regulated under our 218 series that we passed a year or two ago. There was a provision in the 218 rule when we were working on that rule development, which was raised actually by some of the other facilities, about the need or the desire to shut down their SEMs when their base equipment has been shut down. So basically the SEMs is just reading a bunch of zeros, and the concern there is that's kind of okay when you're just kind of doing a little bit of a maintenance. That's like a 2 or 3 days. But now that we've got these landing rules where we're requiring these massive construction type projects to put on controls, this equipment is being shut down, and sometimes even the stack where the SEMS is located is even being removed away, and they're like, where do I put the probe? So it's starting to make a little bit more sense to have some kind of provision in our reclaim rules while the reclaim facilities are in that program to allow them that same opportunity. And so basically it's to allow the shutdown of the SEMS. Currently, the reclaim rules requires the SEMS to always be running. So that's basically the change we're making. So any questions on that? And again, we'll be setting both of these, all these, 4, I guess, rules for the November board meeting. Okay. All right, we'll move on to the budget fiscal impacts items. The first one is here, recognizing the revenue appropriate funds, execute amendment contracts, solicitations, purchase orders from US EPA grants. Jason.
Right, thanks.
Would you like to brief us on that?
Absolutely. So hi again, everybody. So for this item, South Coast AQMD was awarded 2 grants by US EPA. The first one is to expand the existing pilot sensor library under its AQ spec program with additional sensors and directly work with communities. The second grant is for conducting enhanced measurements of PM2.5 in the Wilmington area. These actions are to recognize up to almost $1 million from the US EPA and appropriate funds monitoring analysis budget, execute and or amend contracts, and issue solicitations to purchase support for these projects. With that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Nobody here. Just a reminder, by the way, if folks are listening in from the public, what we're discussing right now is all the first agenda item for this. So we will open up to public comments, but it will be for the whole agenda of the October meeting. Okay, no questions here though for Dr. Lowe. Okay, then, I think we've got the next 4 items are coming from our Technology Advancement Office. I see Walter popped in. Why don't we start with the first one, Walter? If you have somebody else needing to brief, feel free. But this first one here, 12131 on page 4, issue the RFP for technical assistance to support South Coast TAO's activities and implementation efforts, which we know is large. Go ahead, Walter.
Thanks, Mike. Good day, everyone. My name is Walter. I'm the Planning and Roles Manager in the Technology Advancement Office. I'll be acting DEO in May and Aaron's absence as they're both in Europe. First item, to issue RFP. This action is to issue an RFP to solicit proposals from qualified consultants and consulting firms to help with our TAO staff administer and implement incentive programs. We are proposing to execute contracts with qualified firms in an amount not to exceed 600,000 from the administrative portions of the Cromwell program, Community Air Protection Program, Prop 1B, as well as the administrative portion from Clean Fields Fund 31. And with that, I will open it up for any questions.
Great. Any questions on that item for Walter? Okay, Walter, you're gonna take the next one too, amending the contract to Coachella Valley.
Absolutely. It'll be my turn in the hot seat for the next few items. So
okay.
So the amendment to the contract for CBAG, this action is to amend the existing contract with CBAG to add an additional 255,000 in accrued interest of their award balance. So in 2013, CBAG was awarded 17.4 million for a project known as CV Link. CV Link is a 46-mile corridor for pedestrians and e-bikes connecting Palm Springs to Coachella. So in January of 2021, the board previously had approved amending the CBAG contract to add 1.4 million in accrued interest. This action is to further amend the contract with the last round of accrued interest. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Sounds good. Keep that project going. Great. All right. CV Link, let's do it. Okay, continue on page 5 here. We've got the execute a contract for the development and demonstration of electric power trailers for heavy duty vehicle. All right. What do we have, Walter?
All right. So for this action, staff is proposing to partner with Range Energy and UCR's CSERT to develop and demonstrate a battery electric powered trailer that can offer a propulsion assistance and regenerative braking onto an existing diesel truck. So this integration and hybridization of heavy duty Class 8 trucks with this technology can provide immediate opportunity to reduce emissions. So Range Energy essentially will provide the electric powered hybrid trailer to a local fleet, and UCR CSERT will evaluate the emission reduction benefits. This action is to execute contracts with Range Energy in an amount not to exceed 500,000 and with UCR CSERT in an amount not to exceed 50,000. The total project cost for this is 4.3 million, and Range Energy's cost share amount will be 3.7 million. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any questions for Walter on this item? Sounds another exciting project, right? I mean, not only just proofing up that this technology and electric can be a pathway forward, but also they're going to be quantifying those emission benefits, which is really helpful. Okay.
Keep up the good work, Walter.
All right. All right, we're going to
CSERT going to do their cool take it out on the road and actual measure while it's driving kind of thing that they.
Yeah, looks like it. So it'll be good to see how that turns out. Okay, we're going to move on to page 6. The next item again for Walter here with execute a contract to develop and demonstrate a portable liquid hydrogen fueling station or system, I guess it is, for medium and heavy duty equipment applications.
Absolutely.
Brief us, Walter.
Yes, thanks, Mike. So this last item, staff is proposing to execute a contract with Zero Emission Industries, or ZEI. They will be developing, building, and demonstrating a portable, self-contained, and rapidly deployable liquid hydrogen fueling system to meet the challenges zero emission, hydrogen powered large equipment. And these large equipment include marine vessels and locomotives, because these large pieces of equipment have higher power demands and they have longer service routes. So the onboard gaseous hydrogen fuel, it's not technically feasible. And it's preferred and recommended that liquid hydrogen be an alternative. So the total project cost for this is 7.5 million. Staff is proposing to execute a contract with ZEI in an amount not to exceed 1,175,000. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Does that mean we're in partnerships, Walter, to be clear?
Yes,
Then-
absolutely. Absolutely. There are a few partnerships under this particular project. We have the CEC, SoCal Gas, as well as Crowley, which is a private company, who will be all contributing to the 7.5 million in project costs.
Great. Thank you.
I
Yes, Bill.
had a couple questions. Thank you. In terms of marine applications, how would this work? What types of vessels would you see this technology working on? And then as a subsequent question, with locomotives, is there any thinking on how far this could extend the range for a locomotive?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. And with that, I will defer to our technology demonstration manager, Vasilios. And Vasilios, please jump in.
Hi, everyone. This is Vasilios Papapostoulou, Technology Demonstration Manager in the Technology Advancement Office.
And he has the power to be invisible. So, go ahead, Vasilios. We hear you. We don't see you, but we hear you. There he is.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So yeah, this technology that is proposed here will be designed and built by zero emissions industries, and the idea is to have that system be capable of supplying a week's worth of fuel to a vessel, marine vessel, or a locomotive or equivalent equipment. So our project here will focus on marine vessels for now, and it can also expand to locomotives or other types of equipment. And it will be capable of supplying that kind of fuel in under 2 hours. That would be about like 3,500 kilograms, and in under 2 hours of refueling any kind of system that I just described. The system will be self-powered, and it will be portable, can be moved in and out of the site, and it can also be expanded to also fuel other systems like aircrafts, medium heavy-duty on-road vehicles, trains, and so on and so forth. In terms of the range of locomotives, it's not clear yet. It's something that we need to be determined as we use that, but the main focus right now is marine vessels, and we may be expanding to other applications as we move forward.
Great, thank you. So yeah, so it seems like this contract would help us learn about these things and the opportunities we have in the future with this technology.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Vasilios and or Walter? Okay, thank you, Vasilios. Appreciate it. Stay alive in 3D. That's good. All right, we're going to stay on this page 6 here and move on to a completely different topic. That is to approve the amendments to the MOU with our Teamsters, administrative code provisions, et cetera, for non-represented employees regarding employee contributions for health insurance premiums. John Polvera.
Yes, good morning, John Olvera, Deputy Executive Officer for Administrative and Human Resources. This item is to approve an additional $75 in the employer's contribution towards health insurance premiums, begin with the 2024 insurance rates. This item will cover employees in their Teamsters bargaining units by way of an agreement with them, and the additional amount will also cover non-represented employees. Happy to answer any questions.
No questions for John on this item? Okay, then. We'll move on to page 7, where we have the information only, receive and file reports. I believe Sarah just kind of keeps these all grouped together. Any questions, Mark?
For the record, For the record,
Yes.
I have no questions because the report was there and I was able to read it and I got the information about moving around. So I have no questions.
No. Okay, I didn't predict that one. So, all right, sounds good. Well, if you think of a question, feel free to ask. Anyone else for any of these reports? Okay, so we'll move on to page 8 then, and these are the reports to the committees. And Carter.
On Wedge, was there, what happened with the San Joaquin bill?
San Joaquin bill?
Nine eighty-five?
Oh,
The,
so- Yeah, 949. Yeah, so,
when I looked at just,
yeah.
it looked like it may have.
Derek, do you wanna
Yeah.
talk about that?
I'll touch that. Yeah, so it's, they held it. It's gonna be a 2-year bill. They have until January to get it out. They're giving them more time to come up with some amendments to make everyone happy. They fell, I believe, 3 votes short to get it out of the Senate. So they held it over and they're gonna review it again from now until the end of January they have to get it out.
Okay, great. Thank you, Derek. Really appreciate the update. Anyone else?
Well, and one quick thing I looked at the minutes and I don't think I was there. So you might not want me to show as being attending.
Mark, could you clarify which one you're talking about?
The legislative committee.
For the legislative committee. Okay, got it.
I was in Seattle. I don't believe I was there.
Okay, we'll change that.
Did you catch that, Derek?
Yes.
Okay, great.
It's invisible too.
It happens. Okay, great. I think this wraps up the agenda. Just a reminder that the October meeting will not be at headquarters. We are doing it being off-site.
So just, well, we'll send something out if anything changes, but check the website, check your emails. It's a little in the air right now, but hopefully.
Location-wise.
Yeah, location-wise. Yes.
So it might be here, but it might be.
Right now, we're, still on course for LA Valley College, but just in case, yeah. So just hedging a little bit.
And Cindy, I believe. Go ahead, Mark.
I appreciate you telling me that because
Watch it on YouTube.
I know the council member is very interested.
Okay.
And by the way, because of that, because we were going to be remote, is there going to be a closed session?
Yes, we're planning on having closed session.
The other thing, Babe, do you want to speak to, because it's at LA Valley College, it's a special governing board meeting and the timing for the documents?
I would just say we'll proceed as normal right now, unless something changes.
Okay.
Michael, I had a question. We have a large group over in Europe. Could you give us kind of an update and the public as to why we're there?
Like for right now?
Right now, yeah, we have a group from AQMD in Europe right now.
Yeah, so they went to go visit the Port of Rotterdam, which has like one of the cleanest ports in the nation or the world. Yeah, and so they went to go look at that, and then they went to Man Energy to look at their work and on engines and what they're doing. So yeah, that's where they are.
But I'm sure they'll report back.
Yeah.
when we hear from them. Yes, there's so many hours ahead, so we're not really catching up with them on real time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And relative to the October board meeting, I know Cindy sent out on behalf of Michael Caccioti an invitation to join him taking public transportation out to the valley.
Right.
And so some of us board consultants will be doing that with Michael. So we encourage you to let us know through Cindy if you're planning on joining us, and love to have you all on the train, bus, other modes.
Does he have the map? Is it the route mapped out, Ben?
He does have a route mapped out from Union Station, so the central meeting point. But the sooner we know about whether we're still out in Valley College,
Yeah.
the better.
Right now, plan for it. It's
Okay.
like, but I'm just, saying check.
Okay, great. So that wraps
Susan,
up our.
Susan, I know you're being a little bit cryptic and I understand there's stuff in the air. Is it a logistics thing, like the facility itself? Is it just trying to get everything coordinated to get people to that particular hall, or is there something that more?
We're just trying to, I'll be even more cryptic. We're just trying to get a confirmation from them.
Okay.
It's been very frustrating, yeah.
Because I was not concerned about, but how, where do we park, where it's at? I mean, all of that stuff that I need to.
Yeah,
make sure.
well, definitely, it's like when we get the green light, then we'll send all of that information out. So I know Faye's been working on that and she'll coordinate with Indy, so everyone will have all that information.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, if you take the train out with us, you won't have to worry about parking.
I actually looked into from, where I'm going to be in Rancho Cucamonga, and I figured out it would take me about 3.5 hours to get there. And I thought, I think I'm going to drive.
Okay.
Well,
I did look into it. I did look into it.
Okay.
So I had a brand new Metro right down the street from my house and was like, never mind, I'm driving.
Naturally, as an air agency, we encourage public transit, van pooling, carpooling.
When it takes 3.5 hours.
Right. And if you're flying, get carbon credits. Okay, moving on. Okay, so that completes our agenda item number 1. Do we have any public comments from the public on this item? Ron?
There's no public comment.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 2, other business. Does anyone here have anything else they want to raise? There's a whole little blurb here, but I think you know the drill. Yes, Andrew.
I don't know if this is appropriate or not, if there's any water geeks in the room, but I got to go on a really cool tour down the Eastern Sierra about all the water issues, Mono Lake, Owens Lake. And would have been interesting to this group for dinner one night. The APCO for Great Basin came and talked about $2.5 billion they spent on Owens Lake to control the dust. And this agency, the executive director of the Salt and Sea Authority was also on this tour. So the question was, does any lessons they learned on Owens Lake? And it's way more complicated than it looks. $2.5 billion, thank you very much. Whether any of those lessons translate to the Salt and Sea. And it was interesting, they've laid down gravel, because Owens Lake was one of the worst PM10 sources in the country. It was horrible. For those who don't know the history, LA stole all the water from Owens Valley, and in the 19th century, Owens Lake dried up. Huge hazard. So they put gravel out, they do shallow flooding, and they've got native veg. And what was interesting was they're all interesting. They've all had problems dialing in these techniques to control the dust. But they're pretty much entertainment. But anyway, it was super interesting about how they control dust on Owens Lake for $2.5 billion. And of course, the Salt and Sea guy is like, I can't even get 100 million, or like it's 4 times bigger. But anyway, so it was really interesting.
Yeah.
Were you up there just last week? Pardon? When did you go? 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, because I was at the cabin last week.
The color, the aspen's turning.
Not yet, but it's almost. So yeah, it'll be gorgeous.
Being that's, Salt and Sea, partly, at least in our
Right,
position, this is of course a concern for us as well. So I do think it was appropriate. And thank God you were just talking about water when you brought up, I hope this is not inappropriate. Oh, no. Okay. Very good. Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. Anyone else with other business? Something you want to?
And Mojave has a really good conference coming up. Their California Desert Air Working Group that Mojave Desert puts on. Our own Dr. Reese is going to present. They're going to have updates from CARB and other air districts. So anyway, it's a really worthwhile conference. At least it's kind of local. It's in Temecula.
And when's the date of that, Andrew? So if you have public online, we could at least announce that. Oh, you didn't make it easy. It's all very, very busy agenda. Okay, great. November 1st and 2nd of this year in Temecula. Yes, it's the California
Desert
Air Working Group. Okay.
Yeah, I presented last year. It was great conference.
Yeah, they would have
It's a great name.
They've gotten better about keeping it local because they've had it in gorgeous venues, hundreds and hundreds of miles away. And back when I was actually employed,
Yeah.
had a hard time convincing my bosses.
It's like an all-star cast on here. So
It's a
yes, I
really
do
good
recommend folks to look that up. Sea Dog. And it's, yes.
Mojave Desert, Mojave Desert AQMD.
Great. Thank you, Andrew, for that update.
One interesting thing, I mentioned this to Sarah about 4 months ago, is that there's been a fairly significant change in the weather patterns. It's called the Pacific Oscillation. Are you familiar with that? We're going into a cool phase, and this phase may last 10, 15 years. And the point is, I think you'll notice that ozone levels are slightly down starting last year and this year also, except for August. It's been a pretty clear there. Anyway, just a little.
It's also been rough.
That Ron?
Pacific
So the rains didn't hurt either, right? For our pollution. Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item number 3, public comment. I guess this is just general public comment. Do we have anyone either here in the room or out to the general public?
No general public.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ron. And I guess the last part's adjournment. I can't believe that's actually an agenda item. So. You mean public comment on the adjournment? How's that work? Okay, great. Thank you guys so much. You have such an important job to do. You are our local, our voices to communicate with your folks and make our meetings more productive, smoother, and informational as well for them beforehand. So really appreciate it. So have a good rest of your week. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everybody on.
Everyone.
Line.